Okay, what's up, guys? It's the Ascension of Babylon. What we do here is we talk about the occult, we talk about spiritual self-development, and we talk about the healing process. You already know what to do. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And if you gain value from this video, hit that like for me. So with that being said, we're going to be talking about what God is, or what I usually call the God energy, the God consciousness, or the source energy. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about what God is, because for even those of us who didn't grow up with a religious upbringing, there's still a deep-rooted religious trauma within the mass collective psyche in general. So even if you didn't grow up with a very religious family, there's probably beliefs that you have that, ultimately trickle down from the overall energy and the teachings of religion. And one of the biggest beliefs that actually keeps people from knowing what God actually is the belief that God is outside of us, or that we're separate from God. It's this thing that we need to pray to. It's this thing that we need to worship. It's this thing that if we don't do X, Y, and Z, then maybe we're going to hell and we're going to suffer, and things of that nature. And this is actually a very intentional, what I call a dualistic program that is designed to keep people separate from the God energy, to keep people shelled away inside of identities that keep people from actually embodying the God energy. Because a lot of the people that promote these religions, as well as many other aspects of the system in general, they have the intention of controlling consciousness. So the biggest way to do that is to separate a person from their own divinity by keeping them seeking outside of the self, when it was actually in all of us the whole entire time. So what God actually is all things, all of creation, and even the infinite pure potential of the unmanifest plane that in the occult space we call the void. So God is you, God is me, God is a bumblebee, God is the cop and the robber experiencing itself through both the cop and the robber at the same time. God is nature, God is the wind, God is the fire, God is the stars, God is extraterrestrial civilizations that may be existing in our solar system, our galaxy, the universe. God is also many different parallel universes and parallel realities. God is both the painted and the painter at the same time. So God is within every single one of us. And the reason why we were created, as well as anything else within the created universe, is so this infinite, pure, raw potentiality could experience itself in more of a fractalized and a condensified form, so it can better get to know itself. Because before the source created all these different extensions of it to experience itself through, it was mostly pure potential. It wasn't actually experiencing itself in an evolutionary way. It was what you can imagine to be kind of like this floating mass of energy that could have manifested many realities, but hasn't necessarily lit the divine spark of consciousness to actually create what we know to be the universe, and many other universes that exist simultaneously at the same time. And it could get a little bit deeper than this, but this is a linear perspective of what God is and why creation, essentially needed to be created. So imagine this pure, raw, primal essence. Basically, this is just a silly way to put it, but basically just floating around in a vacuum, floating around in space. And it thinks to itself, well, I want to get to know myself. So I'm going to create all these different extensions of me in which I'm going to experience myself through. So once again, this is alien life. This is the consciousness of different planets. So the planets are alive. The consciousness and awareness of a star, of a black hole. Anything that emanates from the source, just like the source is alive and has the ability to perceive itself. And interestingly enough, because the source needed to perceive itself in a deeper, more hands-on way, so it created extensions of itself that can perceive themselves as it is perceiving itself through all of those individualized creations. So I know this can get a little bit complex, but I'm thinking that most of you are, for the most part, understanding what I'm saying here. God is all things. God is anything that you can possibly imagine existing, and even the unmanifest realm of existence, which is pure potentiality, but hasn't necessarily taken form yet, and doesn't necessarily have a definitive meaning because it hasn't come into the created universe where meaning is now defined. So this is essentially what God is. God is the infinite and the limitless all, which is inside of every single one of us. We all have the power to create and destroy because we are all this God energy, every single one of us. You are both the painter and the painted simultaneously at the same time. Now, how do we embody the God energy? Because a lot of us have spent our lives separated from that pure, raw potential that is existing inside of us. So first, we need to start forming healthier perceptions to where we see ourselves as the creator. The creator or source understands that it's created all things. But as human beings, we're often fragmented and separated from that understanding that anything that's in our life experience, a positive experience, a negative experience, a healthy relationship, an unhealthy relationship, poverty, financial freedom, whatever it is our own creation. And what we're creating and attracting is directly associated with our nervous system's energetic resonance. And that resonance then broadcasts a frequency or a signal in which reality responds to and creates physical form. So the same way the source, which is this raw state of potentiality that hadn't necessarily taken physical form yet, decided to create physical form, and anything else that exists within the spectrum of reality, we do the same thing, but we're largely unconscious of how we're creating our reality. So once again, step one is seeing ourselves as the creator. We're not a victim. Things aren't happening to us. They are actually happening from us. Everything is a projection of both our conscious, subconscious, and unconscious states in our overall energetic resonance. We are always seeing ourselves reflected back to us through whatever experiences we are going through in our life experience in general. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a really abusive relationship. It could be a really healthy relationship. It could be an illness. It could be mental health problems. All of that is based on our nervous system's resonance, which is both creating and attracting our reality. And our nervous system's resonance is actually going to function in alignment with different parts of us that we actually come into the world with, but due to societal programming and trauma that a lot of these parts actually take on, this can dysregulate our nervous system, which will just cause us to create a reality that is reflecting back to us these different parts that are dysregulated. So embodying the God consciousness means taking accountability for what we're creating by firstly seeing ourselves as the creator. This is very, very important. Now, I feel like the most important thing that I can share with you is present moment awareness. And it's the same thing. So because we've went through early childhood trauma and conditioning, a lot of us are either stuck in the past, or we're in a doer identity to where we're always trying to project into the future or to perceive the future in some way. That's actually this protective program that's been running in our subconscious, designed to keep us away from being present. Because being present also means that we have to be present with these different parts of us that are oftentimes still holding on to the early childhood trauma and early childhood wounding that we went through. So from a young age, to survive these different traumas and the emotions associated with them, these different parts of us, they develop adaptations like addiction, unhealthy relationship, substance abuse, all kinds of things, certain belief systems and identities, things that we tell ourselves, the inner narrative, all to try to bypass and to create a story around what we are feeling, and all to avoid being present. Because once again, being present means we actually have to take accountability for what we're actually feeling, and we actually have to start feeling it. But to embody the God state or the God consciousness and to start operating from a higher state of consciousness and awareness in a way that's sustainable in the long term, we have to be present with those darker parts of self. We have to be present with the more so negative emotions that we were always feeling, even though a lot of us have tried to spend our entire lives avoiding, using different forms of unhealthy coping, identities, and all the things that I kind of spoke about briefly before. Now, God is the present moment. So we typically view time in a linear way, to where the future hasn't happened yet and the past has already happened. But in reality, when we kind of zoom out of the human experience, or the way that we typically view time as human beings, we realize that everything is basically happening in different frequential windows of reality called timelines, and it's all happening in the present moment all at once. So this also implies that to access and to embody the God energy, which a lot of us have fragmented from, we have to train ourselves into that present moment state of awareness, and this can take some time. But pure presence comes from being present. And God, or the source energy, is pure, raw, primal presence. That's what we are at our core. But there's often an evolutionary process that we need to embrace to return to that raw, primal state of presence and just being present inside of our bodies, being in the here and the now. And what presence also means is not over-identifying with positive and negative. Meaning, if we're having a negative experience, we can allow ourselves to embrace that as an experience, but knowing that we're not the negative experience, we're the observer of that experience, but also understanding the importance of feeling the emotions associated with it, because it's those energies that we likely suppressed that created the negative experience in the first place. And if it's a positive experience, it's the same thing. We don't need to latch onto it. We don't need to try to make that positive last forever. We can enjoy that positive experience while it's taking place and unfolding in our lives, and we could be present with it, and we can appreciate that experience, but we don't need to hang on to the positive polarity of things either. We don't need to hang on to the emotions that feel good. So the God consciousness, or the source, and embodying that state means operating right in the middle. And there's going to be times that we might experience a little more negative, and we want to be open and willing to do that. And there's also going to be times where we might experience a little more positive, and we want to be open and willing to do that. And this is how you actually sustainably maintain high levels of awareness and higher states of consciousness. It all comes down to being present. All of you is existing in the present moment, in the here and in the now. So to access all of you, which is just essentially what we call the source or God, you need to be present. The more and more you allow yourself to be present, the more and more of that infinite allness you are able to access and actually hold the energy of in your physical body. But the more we're stuck in the past, or the more we're spiraling off into the future, the more we fragment from the present moment, and the more we fragment from the raw energy of what we call God. So this is what I wanted to break down in this video. It wasn't meant to be a very long video, but I think I conveyed what I wanted to convey here. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will catch you in the next video. Thank you.